One of the biggest shifts for me was removing myself from the scarcity mindset. And when I say scarcity, a lot of times people just pull towards money, but it's more than that. It's like scarcity when it comes to time, when it comes to energy. And it's having to say, wow, I've been programmed and accustomed to thinking that there's never enough time in a day. And when I have more energy, I'll do this. When I have more time, I'm going to do this. I can't afford this. I can't afford this. When I have more money, I'll do this. Not realizing that kind of conversation creates more of your reality, right? So my biggest shift was like, I don't remember the last time I ever said, I can't afford this, or I don't have the time, or I don't have the energy. Instead, it's like, no, how can I make more time? How can I find more energy? How can I try to make more money? Because then when you feel like you have more time, you're coming more from an abundant state. I feel like I have more time now with a mom of 2 kids, married with a business and all the stuff than I did when I was just working in corporate by myself. So it's really about that perception. I feel like that's the first thing to say. I have been programmed to think that I am so limited based on what's around me, but I actually can create so much more abundance.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Sovereign Self Show. And we have a beautiful example of that today. Tanya Khazaal is here, and we're talking all about how to reclaim your sovereignty in all pillars of your life. Because I know the listeners here, we've been through a healing journey. We want to give back in our business and the work that we do, but also our health and our relationships. So we're going to dive into all of that in just a little bit. But before, a little bit more about Tanya is that she is a #1 best-selling author, a 7-figure entrepreneur, and a founder of She's in Power movement. A former corporate strategist who once lived in her car with a newborn now helps freedom-seeking women break free from the societal systems and step into sovereignty. Hello, perfect guest for our show, without sacrificing their health, family, or femininity. Through her unique method, or unique blend of strategy, energetics, and soul, she empowers her community to build profitable, purpose-led businesses rooted in alignment and ease. Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Lauren, for having me. And I appreciate the very thorough and lengthy introduction. I did want to make one small correction just so people aren't misled. I lived out of my car in garbage bags, absolutely, when I was so broke before I became a mom.
Before mom.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Before I became a mom, so no one thinks I was living out of my car with my newborn, just to be completely clear on that one. But I was living out of my car with garbage bags, completely broke, and my car was actually going to get defaulted and repossessed, actually.
And now you're here, and now you are fully in your sovereignty and mind, body, and soul, which is what I love about your approach. And I think that really is the holistic but feminine way to life. There's a through line through everything. How you do anything is how you do everything. So, the very abridged version, I'm sure people are listening, they're like, regardless if there's a newborn or not, how did she get from this
Right. That's it.
state really to the 7-figure business and helping other women prove in the system of how to be feminine, be in your power, and really live your best life, really step into your sovereignty?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the first thing to realize is like when you look at like what I call the 4 pillars of our life and what really brings our happiness and everything in alignment is there's 4 pillars. There's your inner world, right? When you think about mindset and energetics and all of the things, but then there's the lifestyle and well-being. Then there's your relationship and connections and communication, and then there's your vision and legacy. And what I have found is each one is equally as important, even though the weight in each section can vary depending on your season, of course. But each one is so incredibly important because if one is not fulfilled, it bleeds into the others. If you're not taking care of your health and you're only focusing on your business is not going to thrive the way that you want it to. If your relationship at home, which is an area that most people don't want to admit or bring to the forefront because they're worried about the judgment and all the things, but if your relationship and your marriage is hurting and your connections and your conversations and all of those, regardless of business and health, it's going to affect you. It's going to affect your health. It's going to affect your business. It's going to affect your inner world. And so each one is so incredibly important for each one. And so, yes, my mission and what I think I've done a really good job, not just in myself, but with other people, is have them recognize how can I work towards each one of those pillars without compromising one or the other. Because a lot of times I find that we have these societal expectations that in order to thrive in business, I have to compromise motherhood. And in order to thrive in motherhood, I have to compromise my purpose. And each one kind of, it's like, no, you can thrive in each one of them. And like I said, put a weight on each one based on the season.
Yeah, I noticed that, I know you started with health and wellness, right? When you got in this journey first. That was my journey too, through the body. And I noticed I was helping health coaching women and they were coming to me knowing all the foods that felt good for their body, knowing what to eat. And it was the stress, it was the emotional, it was the energetic that was literally rippling in every area of their life. And it's all connected. And what I would see was like you can eat all the kale in the world, all the organic food, but if you're eating organic fear. So it's like really addressing before we even get to those four pillars, what's the mindset shift or the energetic shift we have to make really into that being a sovereign being? What was that like for you? Because there is a switch from like that victimhood state into a possibility of creating your life.
I would say one of there's a few different things. One of the biggest shifts for me was removing myself from the scarcity mindset. And when I say scarcity, a lot of times people just pull towards money, like scarcity in terms of money, but it's more than that. It's like scarcity when it comes to time, when it comes to energy. And it's having to say, okay, wow, I've been programmed almost and accustomed to thinking that there's never enough time in a day. And when I have more energy, I'll do this. When I have more time, I'm going to do this. I can't afford this. I can't afford this. When I have more money, I'll do this. Not realizing that that kind of conversation creates more of your reality, right? So my biggest shift was like, wait, no, I'm no longer ever, I don't remember the last time I ever said, I can't afford this, or I don't have the time, or I don't have the energy. Instead, it's like, no, how can I make more time? How can I find more energy? How could I try to make more money? And that was probably one of the biggest things because then when you feel like you have more time, you're coming more from an abundant state and you do more of the like I feel like I have more time now with a mom of two kids, married with a business and all the stuff than I did when I was just working in corporate by myself, you know what I mean? No kids yet. So it's really about that perception. I feel like that's the first thing to say. I have been programmed to think that I am so limited based on what's around me, but I actually can create so much more abundance.
Yeah, and that's really shifting from the hustle culture, right? A
Yes.
lack, trying to do more, 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 and really shifting into, am I attacking this from like the problem, the lack, the scarcity, or am I really tuning into the solution here of
That's
those
it.
possibilities and living from that? And I know a lot of the listeners here either have a business or they want to start a business. So you are in the right place. For me, taking the leap from corporate into doing this full time, that was a bigger leap than I thought it was going to be. What are some things for listeners who have the business or not to really start to build that momentum in an aligned feminine way? Because I think we just copy what's been going on for years and it's really like my body wouldn't let me. It wouldn't let me keep doing more. It wouldn't let me. It would just shut down. The burnout, the anxieties. What are some shifts specifically in that area that really can ripple out as we start to transition into more of that abundance mindset?
I think the very first thing to get into, whether you're just starting on business or where you're going, getting so clear on your personal values and your non-negotiables. Because like I have inside our community, I have a challenge, it's like the brand clarity and confidence challenge. And just that alone, when people hear brand, for example, they're like, oh, well, what is my brand? Or people that are already in business literally bypass the brand thinking it's not the foundation of everything. This is where it's like, who am I? What do I want to teach? What's the legacy I want to leave behind? What are my values? What are my non-negotiables? What do I want people to remember me for? And I feel like when you start there, regardless of whether you have a business or not, you get so clear on your true life values and you have to embody that. It's like when you embody that, now you have more clarity for the business. Now you have more clarity on everything that you're developing. Because what I have found is someone who hasn't started yet, they're not sure. They're like, oh, I want to start a business. But if they're not sure, then they're looking for a quick fix to get out of corporate or whatever it is. And that quick fix is not going to be sustainable because when life gets hard, when shit gets tough and all of the stuff, you're going to fall back and you're going to find that next shiny object. And I see the same thing in business, right? And they're like, oh, I'm trying to do all of this stuff. I'm doing all of this. But okay, so when I ask them, okay, but what is your brand? What do you want to be remembered for? What does your audience know you for? And they're like, I don't know. So let's go back to the drawing board because no matter what offer, how you show up on social media or anything like that, you're going to be following the trend versus coming from a place of authenticity. And so it's so important because I feel like when you embody that, it's so much easier to build your business. It's so much easier to find the business and actually get started on the business and scale the business and everything.
Yes, I feel that so deep in my bones because I live so much in the other side of it of like, how do I organize this information or the next best Instagram hook? It's like, no, you getting really clear on who I am as a person and also the business thing, the huge through line there for me. And I think that's really I love to hear your perspective because I love toying around with the idea. The idea of like the discipline and the guidelines and the clarity like you just spoke
Mm.
about allows us to be free and to grow and to flow and more in that feminine. So it's kind of in my perspective, it's kind of a balance of the both. So how do we use that structure, that clarity, like what you just said? What do you want to be reminded or remembered for as a brand, as a human, and apply that into the feminine sales system that you help people with?
So I think, you know, first coming to the realization that it's not about choosing one or the other. It really comes down to like, this is why I talk about those four pillars, because it's like, okay, let's start with the inner world. Okay. Well, when you think about inner world, are you still people pleasing? Are you still putting everybody else's needs before yours? Are you the last person? Are you feeling mommy guilt because God forbid you actually needed that rest, but you should be playing with your kid, or you needed to just 18 minutes to work on your business, but then the guilt is, keeping with your child, where I just see it all. And it's kind of like, it's the illusion of busyness. It's like, it's not, people are like, if I'm doing something, then I'm productive. So then when the guilt comes up because I'm not doing the thing that I know deep down inside I should be doing, whether that's rest, whether that's a date night, whether it's time with your kids, whether it's working on your business, it doesn't matter. There's always that kind of like inner voice that's telling you, I should do this, but no, I want to do this, but I should actually be doing this. And it's not about what you should be doing. It's about listening to that voice. And it's crazy because it's like once you let go of the people pleasing and all of this, it's, pardon my French, it's like, fuck everything. What do I want to do? Like, what do I want to do? What do I want my kids to remember me for? Do I want them to remember me in the hustle culture and being miserable all the time and having me and my husband argue all the time and, spending 3 hours with them, but 2 of the hours I was actually on my phone and not spending quality time with them. But because I spent 3 hours, it made me feel better in my mind versus if I could spend 30 minutes of straight quality time with my child and also do even 30 minutes or an hour in my business, I'm going to feel so much better in both. Because now it's like I wasn't thinking about the guilt of what I need to be doing while I was so present in this. And that's why each one bleeds into it. And so I think it's just a matter of saying, no more excuses. No, I don't care what your situation is. Everything that you're saying as to why you can't do it is an excuse. Whether or not they want to hear that, it's an excuse. I don't have enough time. That's an excuse. I don't have enough energy. That's an excuse. Oh, but my health doesn't give me. That's an excuse. You know what I mean? Oh, I'm so busy at work, and by the time I come home, I don't actually have time. Another excuse. So it's really just about saying, no, no. The legacy that I want to leave for my kids is I want them to remember a healthy and happy mom. I want them to remember their parents being a healthy and happy couple, hustling and working hard, but at the same time, not always working. And like I said, depending on the season, like I believe in working hard, but it doesn't mean working hard is working 8 hours a day. I can be in like a zone for 2, 3 hours and I left feeling more productive. Right. And that's probably one of the biggest things that I could say is that false, identity of doing more to re-up your rewards where it's like, you can't, it's not sustainable. And
I definitely can relate to that. Healing layers, the people pleaser, the codependent energy. Like I was surprised. I'm like, oh, I'm no longer in it's so like the toxic relationship, codependent. Well, that applies to every area of your life, not just like your relationships. It applies to
yeah,
your inner talk, your business, your health, trying to prove to yourself that's lack. That's like,
that's it.
it's always going to be separate, always, always, always separate than who you already are. So shifting into kind of the sale. So we have a clear identity of the business. And I know you talk about the feminine sales shift. A lot of women, there's the lack, there's the icky, there's the uncomfortableness around this. I'd love to hear you just break it down for us,
Yeah.
if
So
you
the
would.
first thing I like to say is nothing kills me more than when entrepreneurs are like, oh, I'm so icky about sales. Well, either get used to it or get out of business. It's one or the other. Like you got to get comfortable with it. Now, with that being said, it doesn't have to be like masculine, like hardcore. My favorite way to sell is storytelling and vulnerability. People buy from emotion. And when people recognize that, people buy from emotion and then they rationalize through logic on that purchase. So storytelling built, and then they have to buy from who they trust, especially now in the online space where there's information overload, there's scammers, there's all of the stuff. If you can share your story, if you can share your authenticity, your brokenness, where you were, like you mentioned me living out of my car, like people are like kind of naturally attracted to being like, "What? It wasn't always this picture perfect thing that you see right now." Like, "No, now I'm gonna walk you through my climb, not just the view, because you see the view, right?" Storytelling and vulnerability, man. If you like those conversations that open up, me sharing that, that opens up the conversations, and through those conversations leads them to the next logical step is the best way to sell.
And I think, like, for me, that's why I got into this because I loved hearing other people's stories, sharing my stories because I
Mhm.
saw the snowball effect starting this podcast 7 years ago now, which is crazy. But, like, really, it's cathartic, it's authentic, it's like
Yeah.
learning to practice your truth because it is true. And to see yourself as that, I don't wanna say master, but it's really like, here's the transformation. I'm embodying this transformation. And if you are trying to help somebody and you don't feel secure in that transformation, like, I think there's some shifts, some internal stuff. So I think that's what I hear a lot from women is that aspect of, like, really getting secure on the owning that transformation for yourself, and when you can own your story, phew, people come
Yeah,
in
and I think a
out of
big
the
part of it is
woodwork.
people think that I can't share it until I'm extremely versed in that topic.
Mm,
Right? And this is like the I have to have a certificate. No, I don't have a degree. No, I don't have this. How can I talk about it? But there's nothing more powerful than the lived experience.
yeah.
Right? So when I have people that come to me like, "Okay, I want to start a business. I have no idea how, what, I don't even know what I'm passionate about or this or that." I tell them, "Okay, what are the 2 or 3 hardest things you've ever gone through in your life that you've overcome?" That you've overcome. It's coming from a place of a scar, not a wound, right? If it's still dealing with it, you're not teaching that to people yet until you're kind of healed through it. But if it's coming from a place of a scar, tell me how you overcame it. Perfect. Now teach that to others. Turn that into a business because there's nothing more healing than that, right? I suffered with chronic anxiety for years, like puking every single morning. I kid you not, Lauren. And I could sit here and go to a therapist, which I did. But my very first question I asked her is, "Have you ever had anxiety?" Yes. "For how long have you had anxiety for?" If she said no, you are not going to help me. I don't care what a textbook taught you. And so when you look at that and people, and I conceptualize it for people, it's like you can have, someone who's got a degree and maybe 13 of them and, 17 letters after their name, but they've never actually had the condition that you've gone through or the experience that you've gone through. You are already better versed to go through it. I've helped students build businesses from their divorce story on how they overcame it, from their hellness, their hellness, their wellness and their health and all of that, because it's like that story is going to transform somebody's life. So you don't need anything. You're already in a place where you can teach that. You just have to
Hmm.
be one step ahead of that, their experience, so that you can walk them through. No one is looking for the expert to take them from A to Z. They have to be able to go from this point to this point to this point and see that. That's why it's important that you're just one step ahead of them. Doesn't have to be 5, doesn't have to be 10. And until people can actually recognize that, then they'll stop their imposter syndrome of like, I don't know enough. I'm going to feel like the fear of rejection or judgment because maybe I don't know enough. I need to know so much more before I can ever even consider myself starting in this path, which is so far from the truth.
Yes, and I think being just a few steps ahead, you have that relatability. You
Exactly.
still remember what it feels like and, like, the pain points, but also the
Yes.
desires and speaking of the pain point desires, I feel like it's trendy nowadays to, like, talk more about the pain points to grab people in. But from, like, this is just something I like working through for myself. From a point of being in this feminine aspect of abundance in all pillars of your life, how do you approach, like, the balance of, like, really communicating the transformation of that, like, end result versus, like, overselling the pain points? Because really people are looking for the transformation.
That's right. Yeah. So this is a tricky topic because once again, people buy from emotion. You have to speak to their pain because when you speak to their pain, they feel like you understand it. They feel seen. And when they feel seen, they're ready for the transformation. So a lot of the times we can sell the transformation, and not that we don't, but there's a way that you sell the transformation when someone doesn't even recognize that they're ready for it or what that looks like for them. And so as much as it could feel ick for a lot of people and being like, I feel like it's low vibration and all this stuff because I'm speaking to their pain, that is where the relatability comes in from. Because sometimes, like for example, I've been in the coaching industry for so long, and sometimes it's like, oh, she said what I was thinking. That's exactly how I feel. And by bringing that out of them, now you're giving them hope that there's a way to transform through it. So it's not like you're sitting in the pain, but a lot of the times that's what gets our attention. And it's human nature, right? When you think about people attracted to the gossip and the bad things that are happening in people's lives, unfortunately, which I hate. But the reality is that first thing that catches your attention is that pain, that emotion. And because you're emotionally driven, then you say, okay, but there's a way out of this. I can transform it for you. But I don't necessarily always share the pain points. I do talk about the emotion of the excitement. Like she never thought that she could now live this healthy, happy, free life. And then, but at the same time, you still take it back to the pain a lot of the times because people cannot relate to the transformation. They relate to the pain. And so it's necessary. So there's a nice marriage that you essentially, which is a big part of what I teach as well. There's a nice marriage in that of, okay, so how do I speak to the transformation, but also speak to the pain in a way that they don't sit in the pain and they're now excited for that transformation. And why I love storytelling so much. I actually have a course that's called Effective Storytelling because when someone can learn how to storytell, you can sell anything through that, whether you're on a podcast, whether you're on social media, just through your written content, through your emails, all of it.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I think on top of, storytelling, selling, there's also this aspect of really redefining what success means to you.
Yes.
And I see some people saying, oh, 10K months, 100K, like there's these benchmark goals that, and maybe that is what it is for you. But I would love to hear, like, how do you really get to know and understand what that looks like for you?
Such a good question. Such a good question. So, what I have learned, and I did the same thing. My success is when I hit the $1 million. First, when I hit the 10K, when I hit the 100,000, when I hit this. But when I actually learned what does success look like for you, it's not monetary. It's why do you want that money? Let's just say the success for me is 10,000. Why? What do you want to do with that? What is it going to do for your life? How are you going to live differently, act differently, be different? That is the picture of success that people need to paint and then reverse engineer it. Get so clear. For me, my definition of success is being able to travel anywhere in the world with my kids, to not have them to be dependent in a school system where I could teach them, where I can work with my husband from wherever we are, to do all the stuff, to take my parents on trips. Like that for me is success, to be able to, help as many needy people as I can, to do all of this stuff. Then, okay, reverse engineer it. How am I going to get to that? How much do I need to make to get to that? And then now you're driven not by money, you're driven into a legacy almost, right? Like this is the legacy. That definition of success, I find people gravitate to more because you're able to see that success in a conceptual way. Because I could define success, but if I can't put a picture on what that 10K is going to look like and do for me, then what are you really working towards? Your money is not the success. It's what you're going to do with the money that's the success. And that's the biggest thing that I did with my students is, what is like your goal? Like, what is that success? That paint that picture for me. Not monetary. Let's get deeper. What is that perfect life for you? Now let's reverse engineer it and calculate how much do you need to be making to actually be able to have that life? How are you going to start making that much money? What do you got to start doing today? And then kind of reverse engineering it that way.
Hello, taking a quick break here to tell you about something I'm so passionate and excited about that I take almost daily. Micro-dosing mushrooms. If you are looking for natural ways to support your emotional, mental, spiritual health and well-being, then you might want to try Golden Rule mushrooms. Microdosing is not about escape. It's about returning to who you really are. It's a science-backed way to reset your mind, rewire habits, and reconnect. Golden Rule uses organic mushrooms, 100% fruiting body, accurate dosage, has amazing customer service, education, and safety protocols. Use code Lauren10, that's LOREN10 at goldenrulemushrooms.com for 10% off your purchase. It's a small step that might make a huge difference in how you feel. Thank you so much for supporting our show. Back to the episode. Beautifully said. I picked up on you saying legacy. And I think a lot of us relate. I know myself, it's like, it's a bigger mission, this life, what we want to do, whether it's family, our business, creative wise, this aspect of legacy. How do you define that for yourself? Because for me, it's kind of similar to how like what you just described about what that
Okay,
money sounds like.
answer that. Like, what is your definition of legacy? When someone were to ask you, what is legacy to you? What is it?
Oh, I think just living my truth, being that who I really am, because I know I can't change other people, but it's like the legacy of like my vibration. It's a feeling more than I can articulate it, but I think, oof, knowing who I am and being who I am.
Yeah, a lot of times legacy, we think that it's like, I want to leave the millions for my kids. I want to leave these monumental things and all of that for the kids. For me, legacy is exactly how you're living every single day. Like it's now. Right now is your legacy. When you think back on how my kids are going to remember me, your kids aren't going to give a shit whether or not you left $1 million or $5 million for them. Okay, yeah, maybe it's going to give them one foot in the door, but how were you with them? They're going to, like, your legacy is how you're being remembered for, is how caring were you? How generous were you? How was your communication? How loving were you? All of these is your legacy. And that's not a future thing. People tend to think I'll build my legacy when I'm ready. You already are building it. How you're living every single day is your legacy. So you're either going to start really living in that legacy now, or you're going to wait for a future moment and be remembered for however you're living right now.
I feel like that's any manifestation, any change. It's living as that now, feeling that now, knowing what you want and why you want it. Just like you said about the
That's right.
abundance. And once you have that, I mean, it's really the world is your playground, your oyster, if you will. We talked a little about what your community is about. Could you kind of give us a deeper dive into She's in Power and like how all those four pillars of
Yeah.
life relate and synergistic and all that beautiful stuff?
Yeah. So, I mean, I obviously started as Tanya the herbalist, and I have had thousands of health consultations, and I got to a point where I realized so many of them had the same underlying issue, right? You can eat the foods, do all the stuff. But what's interesting is that taught me so much. And then for the last few years, I've been working with health coaches and practitioners and all the stuff, helping them build their business online. Because once again, I'm all about sovereignty. And the first step in order to really do that a lot of times is breaking free from the corporate system and government checks and all the stuff. And after working with hundreds of people on their business, I've noticed that 80 to 90% of the work that we were doing together was not even business. It was everything else and all the shit and ick that's coming out from what they need to be able to sustain and pursue that business, which was uncovering. I can't even tell you how many marriages I've saved at business coaching, which is crazy, right? And I think I'm not just saying that. I genuinely think that I'm gifted when it comes to relationship building, is because I have done so much work on rebuilding and reframing my relationship with my parents and being the middle child and feeling like I wasn't loved and all of the stuff, to not just rebuilding, like having the best relationship than ever before with my sister and my brothers, and repairing and rebuilding my husband's relationship with his mom, who actually like abandoned him when he was 14, now living with us. And people are like, what? And I was like, I know, but like, because it's all about simple ways of communication and perspective that could shift, that like you feel like a different person. It's the best way to heal that inner child. And so I've done that. And then we do the inner work, and then removing imposter syndrome, and then the well-being. And when I say lifestyle and well-being, I'm not here to take like, oh, take this supplement, do this. No, it's like all of the inner work. And that's when I had the aha moment, saying there is no way that I went through. Okay, when women or moms are sitting there and they're kind of like, I don't know what to do with myself. My marriage is okay, but I'm exhausted, so I put it on the back burner because I have to take care of my kids, and that's, my priority. I'm a nurturer. But I know I'm meant for something more, but I don't think I'm ever going to have the time to do that because I have to prioritize this. And then I meant to do this and do this and do that. She's Empowered community was created for that person. Like me as Tana the herbalist, that's why I created that community. There's no way that I went through toxic relationships my entire life because I watched abuse in my own household, to overcoming it, to marrying my best friend. Thank you, God, mostly to finding that healthy, happy relationship, 11 years in, where we have date nights and cuddle and all the stuff. And people are like, what? And I was like, yeah, there's a way that you can keep that honeymoon phase. And I truly believe it. There's a way that I can find the balance between working on my business and being with my kids and so present, so that they remember that and they don't feel like mommy's always working. There's a way where you can thrive in all of that And so I realized I needed to not just create a community, I needed to create a community where I would normally charge tens of thousands of dollars to work with my team, which I have for years. And I said, no, I'm going to make it so freaking affordable that anyone can join and no longer put their excuses in the way as to why they can't move their life forward. And so I did that. And even though my entire team of people around me, like, what? How are you going to sustain your business and everything like that? I said, that's okay, because I know God wants me to do this. And because he wants me to do this, and it might not make sense on paper, it'll work itself out. Because like I said, I didn't go through the toxic relationships. I didn't live out of my car with, living out with garbage bags. I didn't go through from chronic anxiety, insomnia, endometriosis, IBS, and everything else you could think of to just teach people business or just teach people this. And so I had to create that community and said, this is my next step. This is my next step in my purpose, is create this community in a way that women are going to know that, hey, I can thrive and actually do amazing in all four pillars of my life without compromising one or the other. And I can, what I call, be the CEO of my life in every aspect.
Yes, boom. That is definitely sovereignty right there. And I think, you know, I started with Dr. Joe Dispenza's work years
Hmm.
ago, and his voice was ringing in my head when you said the four pillars again. When you can get one of those pillars or two of the pillars kind of in alignment, the rest will follow. Because, like you said, there's this through line. It's an energy shift, it's a perspective shift. You're going to show up differently in all those areas.
Yep.
What have you seen? Like, I know there's you're building momentum. Let's say one person specifically focusing on one or two of those pillars. How is that kind of snowball and kind of just like manifest? I know in my life, it's like I'm working in one area and then boom, 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 all these
Well,
other
the very
areas come
first thing
together.
is it's funny. I literally just launched this community just a couple of weeks ago. So it's crazy. Just a couple of weeks ago. And people are like, what is this thing? So the biggest thing is you have to go through, we get them to go through kind of like that wheel of life, because a lot of the times what we think we need to focus on is not the thing that we need to focus. Like the magic happens in the work that you're avoiding, right? And so it's like I'm taking them back and saying, hey, I'm going to be that like tough love, and everybody knows me as tough love and they love it. I'm going to be the one that's going to make you face that mirror and say, no, I'm going to make you face that magic that you've been avoiding, and you are going to thank me. And it's so transformational because so many people are like, I'm here to work on my business. I'm like, okay, cool. Let's go through all of this. You want to work on your business, but as long as this is a 2 or a 3 or a 4, let's not focus on the business. Let's focus on this. And all of a sudden everything else does better. So one of my students, for example, her biggest thing is finances and business. She's super stressed. She's collecting debt. She's building her business, doing all the stuff, and her relationship is lacking. And like, oh, we haven't had a date night and God knows when, and we've done this and we've done that. So I said, we're going to focus there, not here. So we started to work through, okay, how can you make your day work? How can you have a conversation with him on doing all of that? In 1 week, she's like, I literally feel like this whole different sense of like motivation and excitement. Why? Because you're releasing serotonin and dopamine and that love, and people yearn for that love and that connection that gives you this new sense of excitement. All of a sudden, her business was doing better. Like that energetic shift, people feel, even if it's through social media, and all of a sudden people were converting better and all of that. And she's like, I'm like, nothing changed. It was all the stuff that you had to work through. And so that's, people come in and they're talking about one thing. They're coming in with, this is what I think I want, but we're getting them what they need. And that's where the shift happens, because a lot of the times they don't know what they need. They know what they want. And we're making them, I'm essentially making them face the mirror and say, this is what you actually need. Yeah, it's kind of beautiful. I love it because they're also empowering each other. It's become a community where they're commenting and they're saying, this is exactly how I feel. This is what I went through. And then they're sharing their perspective. And now it's validating almost and externalizing, not even validate. I don't like the term validating. It's like externalizing what they've been internalizing. And that in itself is so healing.
Yes, and Abraham just popped in my head saying, you don't have to focus on specifically abundance in order to manifest abundance. Focus on that feeling good. Yes, doing the inner work, but it's the
Yes.
feeling good, the shift of your energy to attract that. It's an internal shift. So that was so wonderfully said. And I feel
But
like
to
this is a
feel good, you got to feel like
yeah,
shit. And I don't think people recognize that. They're
yes.
so afraid to feel like crap. I don't want to feel bad. It's okay. It's necessary. It doesn't last. And that's why it's so polarized, right? Because that's what's going to be like, right? When I walk all my students through the valley of despair. You know, the 5 stages of valley of despair. Are you aware of that?
If you could go through them, I think it would be great. Yeah, I've heard
Okay,
of it,
yeah,
but
because if people understood the 5 stages of life, and 5 stages of life, 5 stages of business, 5 stages of motherhood, 5 stages of entrepreneurship and life and everything is Stage one is uninformed optimism, which is like anytime you're starting something new, I'm going to the gym, I'm starting this business, I found my purpose, I'm in this new relationship. Every single one goes through this. And it's like, things are so good. I'm so excited. I'm so optimistic. I have this new energy. I feel like life is good. Life is finally shifting for me. Okay, that's stage one. Then stage two comes in, which is informed pessimism. And this is where, like, okay, it wasn't as great as I thought. It's great, but it's tougher. Now it's like, okay, we're past the honeymoon stage, and now it's really testing our personalities. Now the business needs me to show up a little bit more than I expected. It's not as smooth or quick as I thought it would be. All of the things starts to come up, and you're like, this is not what I thought it was. Now my excitement is dying down, and boom, you hit stage three, which is valley of despair. And this is where shit gets tough. Like, this is where 99% of people give up and now follow that new shiny object and start back up at stage one. Where what people don't realize is this is where I build the person I need to be to actually reach stage four. And if you don't, you won't reach stage four. This is where you're testing your patience, your faith, your perseverance, your discipline. Because a lot of people think that I'm not motivated to work on it. Cool. Motivation doesn't stay, discipline does. You're disciplined because you're so focused on that future vision, that success picture that we painted, right? Like, you're doing it for that vision, right? And that keeps you excited and motivated. So it's like, I got to be disciplined even if I don't feel like working or working towards that goal. Health, that vision is, I want to be able to lose the weight. I want to feel good. I want to have the energy to play with my kids again. I'm tired of feeling tired, that becomes your motivation. And so when you build the skills and the experience and the wisdom in the valley of despair, and you'll go through this cycle more than once in life. Now you're ready for stage four, which is informed optimism. Now you're like, I see the light at the end of the tunnel. Wow, I'm not even the same person I was before I started this. I needed to go through this. So now you're actually appreciating the skills and you're recognizing the skills and everything that you did. And now from there, it's stage five, which is a success. And so if people recognize that, like, and a lot of times when I talk to people, they're like, I'm literally in the valley of despair now. I'm like, cool, you have two options. You're going to get down, you're going to get dirty, you're going to do the work that you don't want to, and you're going to feel the things that you don't want to feel. But I promise you, you're going to love me and you're going to thank me afterwards when you reach stage four. Or you can totally go back and find that next shiny object, but you're going to end up back in the valley of despair very soon.
Somewhat I can relate to that, and I think what popped in my head was my relationship. We say it all the time, when it gets tough, we trigger each other. Well, the one constant in relationships is yourself.
Yeah.
So you're either gonna take that shit elsewhere or you're gonna work it out here. And
That's the thing.
and
Yeah.
that's that valley, the discipline, the valley of despair that builds that sovereignty, that builds that commitment to yourself. That's where the real self-love. Do
Yes.
you love yourself enough to really be
Also
disciplined
love
enough?
yourself enough for, this is why I'm so passionate about relationships and communication, like
Yeah.
communication, because most people, like, when you find yourself and you're like, I've set my boundaries, I've tried to communicate it, they don't get it, I try to approach it, but like, it's so much energy. Like, if you're going into a conversation and you already feel like, I'm going to have to defend myself, it's not going to go through it, they're going to feel your energy. They're going to feel your energy. Now they're going to shut down and you're going to see, I knew it. I can't talk to you, can't get through. So now you're the victim. They're the ones that are being narcissist or manipulative or emotionally unavailable, whatever it is. And it doesn't matter who the person is. It could be your love, it could be your partner, it could be your mom, it could be your sister. It doesn't matter. Your boss, even. But one of the biggest things that I actually just literally, so anyone who joins could actually see it in the community. She had mentioned how she set the boundaries. She's done all of this stuff in the relationship. And I said her boundary was, on Sundays are non-negotiable for her. She just wants to work on her business. She needs the quiet time, whatever. And her family was kind of arguing with her about, like, you don't care about us. Like, you're there. We're doing stuff on Sundays. That's our only family time and you're not there. And so I approached it differently. I said, you came at them with, these are my boundaries, and they're not respecting it. And now they're making comments at you. Have you ever asked them, how does it make them feel that you're not showing up on Sundays? Just ask them. Not only that, approaching the conversation by saying, like, you guys, like, if I don't have Sunday, I have anxiety. It throws off my whole week. I start to go into panic mode. I start to have this. It's actually very, very hard for me. My family comes number one, and maybe I'll make the exception for coming on sometimes on Sundays. But if I don't go, like, how is it making you guys feel? Does it make you feel like unloved? Like, tell me so I can see it from your perspective. And so many times we're not approaching the conversation that way. We're coming off defensive, like they don't get it. But of course they don't get it because they're coming from their own pain. They're coming from their own perspective. And just that alone in your marriage and everything, like you're being triggered by someone else is because of your own shit. Deal with your own shit. Now you're expecting someone to fix your own shit. You're externalizing your own repair. And that's not right. But we're also in a society that has externalized that repair. You need therapy. You need supplements. You need this. Everything is external in order for you to feel better instead of realizing, no, no, it starts with me.
And that is what it means to be sovereign. 100 freaking percent. It starts with me, it ends with me. It's all me. And that never ceases to surprise me when I'm really being that sovereign self. It's all me. I create that. I approach differently, like you just said, how my role changes, how everybody in my life changes. But you have to be able to look at yourself, have those conversations with yourself from that sovereign point of view instead of victim. Things need to be a certain way. People need to be a certain way, respond a certain way in order for me to do what I want to do or be happy.
And it sucks sometimes, right? To look at yourself in the mirror. Like I still do it now where I was like,
Yeah.
okay, where are you lacking? Like, where are you struggling? I used to suffer with anger issues for a very, very long time. And it's like, okay, how am I going to do this? I was dealt with insecurities and this. It's like having that real conversation of like, okay, so I'm aware that these are my problems. What can I do to make it better? What can I do to make it better and make myself feel better? Right? And just it's crazy to me because if people just worked through that, they would literally be healthier and happier people. It's unreal. Like healthier and happier people, I promise you, you will never ever regret saying, okay, where are my flaws and what can I work on? And if you don't know what your flaws are, and that's okay, because a lot of times it's hard for us to see our own flaws, go to your closest friends, go to your family members and say, what do you think? And go in with an open heart. Don't be triggered. If it triggers you, it's okay. What can I work on? What are things that you've seen in me that you feel like I can work on, from my attitude to my not, I don't want to say perspective, but just allowing them to share that. But where do you feel like I'm great? And where do you feel like I can work on? And the reason why I say I think it's also important to address what can I work on, but what's great about me is because I did this experiment with my own sister. And growing up, my honesty was always an issue. My honesty, because I could be I was called an assertive bitch, literally, because I'm so honest. And it wasn't until I'm now my brand that I realized this is exactly who I am. People come to me because I'm so blunt and honest and doing all the stuff, right? But when I asked my sister this question, she was kind of like, I think one of your greatest qualities is that you're so blunt, but we just don't want to hear it. And I was like, huh. For the longest time, I felt like this was a flaw to you guys. And it was until we obviously got to an age of maturity. But she was telling me that, "No, I think your bluntness is one of the best qualities that you have because it's obviously what got you to this point." And then working through like, what are the other things that you kind of see that I can work on, you know? And so it's interesting and beautiful to kind of have that conversation. I want to see what you see that's great about me, but I want you to tell me what I can also work on from your perspective. Doesn't mean you're going to run home and you're going to say, oh my God, these are things that are horrible about me, but allows you to start to just marinate and say, is this something that deep within me I'm aware of that I know I could work through, and start there?
Thank you. That was an awesome activity for people to try. And I know for me, having the confidence and self security to be able to ask that, that was a big growth for me because before it was just like stay in my lane with blinders up. Don't tell me what to do, how to do it.
Right.
And then being able to be open to see that perspective doesn't mean it's 1,000% true. You can't listen in your own inner being, but it helps build that picture for you to see it differently, like you just described.
This is why community is so important. Community
Yeah.
is so important because they show us your blind spots,
Yes.
right? We were never going to see our own blind spots, and it's so important for people to reflect some of that truth back to us, which is so necessary for you to actually grow and become your higher self to be able to reach that next level of happiness and success.
Boom. I think that's a beautiful mic drop to start. I'm like, we could talk all freaking day. But was there anything else on your heart you wanted to share and wrap up before we close out today?
No, the only thing I would love to do for your audience is, I know I mentioned my community, but I also have a power pillar audio series, and it's short and sweet, and it's something that I typically only share for my mastermind members, like my premium coaching. But for your listeners, I'd love to be able to gift them that. So all they have to do is DM me. I'll do CEO Sovereign in my DM, send me that. I'll send you free access to the Power Pillar audio series. And I think that that's going to be a really good way to kind of bridge in the pillars that I talked about, that purpose, all of that. Because I feel like if there was one message that I could say is a lot of the times we feel like that destination that we're trying to get to is so far away. So we just feel like it's never going to happen because I've got too many steps that I have to take. So I won't. But if you do 18 minutes a day on whatever that goal is, 18 minutes a day, that's 100 hours a year. That's 1,000 hours in 10 years at 18 minutes a day. You become an expert in anything. And so it's like making that time, like just 18 minutes a day. Anyone can find 18 minutes a day to do something that is so critically important to you, whether it's 18 minutes of quiet time with your husband, whether it's 18 minutes on your purpose, 18 minutes of meditation, 18 minutes of mirror work, it doesn't matter. That starts to compound and start with the baby steps. Because when you do that, before you know it, 5 years down the road, you're looking back and you're like, I never thought that I would get here, but thank God I started because now I am here. And so it's like, don't even worry. Let future pacing excite you, but don't let it deter you from feeling like it's so far away and it'll just happen.
Mm. Yes, and don't allow, for me, what I've been really loving and tuning into, don't allow the past of how long it's supposedly already taken determine the success and
Yes,
how quick it could come to you right now
that's
as
great.
well.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. It was so awesome hearing your heart and your own sovereignty story. I know our listeners are going to get so much out of this episode, and I'll make sure to give the instructions how to DM you to get that
Perfect. Yeah,
beautiful,
of course.
yeah, in the show notes. If you
It's a
guys
pleasure.
haven't already, hit subscribe. We're on all podcast platforms and YouTube. And if you've thought of a loved one, a sister, anybody in your life, please send them this episode, because you never know what that one episode is going to do to help spark that intuition, so to just change their entire life trajectory. Thank you again so much for coming on, and until
Pleasure. Thank
next
you,
time.
Laura.
And that's a wrap for today's episode. I wanted to remind you guys that this show is sponsored by Golden Rule Mushroom Company. And by using code Lauren10, that's LOREN10, you can get 10% off and start exploring how these functional microdosing mushrooms could support your health, mind, body, and soul. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time.